right, so I want to talk about the balancing act. So if you've been walking around the spa, the resort, you're seeing these little stacks of rocks, and these are called cairns. And cairns are used, they've been used throughout history to do a lot of different things. They've been used as markers for specific things. They've been used as funeral stones. They've been used for a lot of different things. The way I want to take a look at these today is really around balance, all right? And balance in technology is a topic that I have huge, I could get into a long conversation, so if you're stuck with me at dinner tonight, you're probably going to hear the conversation. But the problem we have is, in technology, we have, and I'm going to use a little bit of Courtney's words, we have been talking around technology, but we've not been talking about technology because, and I just want to show of hands really quickly, because I was super excited yesterday to find out many of you actually have technology in your title. If you are responsible for technology, raise your hand. Okay, that's the most of us we've ever had here, and most people look at me with blank eyes when I start talking about technology. But the problem we have is technology is relegated to somebody else. Technology is somebody else's job. Your tech director, your CTO, whatever. And the real fact of the matter is, and the reason why we're talking about AI today, is it's not somebody else's job, it's your job. If you're superintendent, if you're a board chair, if you're a teacher, if you're anybody within a school district, human resources, I heard many of before, and business officers, it's all of our jobs. And when we don't consider balance with technology, technology takes us. So if you've had all kinds of issues around technology with your students, with your teachers, bad habits, bad things that happen, technology happens to us instead of us controlling the technology. So, oh, too far. There we go. So really what I want to talk about is creating a foundation. So we're going to start with that bottom stone. So what do you know about a bottom stone? It's usually large, right? Because you don't want to start it on a pebble, because what's going to happen? It's all going to tip over. So at your table, really quickly, I want you to think about when you use technology, how are you measuring impact on your content standards using technology? How are you looking at your impact of pedagogy and teaching strategies with technology? How are you looking at potential benefits or concerns with technology? And how are you evaluating the effectiveness of technology in your school? So turn to your neighbors and talk really quickly about how you might be doing this. Just a quick background of me. Even though I'm the technology person, I started my career as a teacher. I was a kindergarten and first grade teacher, so you will always know that I am an educator from first. I am not the techie person, so if you're asking me techie questions, I will not tell you how to wire a closet. I am more on the education side of the house. So, all right, so when we think about this, how many of you, show of hands, have a way that you're evaluating the technology use in your district? Yeah, all right, everybody saw that, right? So let me show you a statistic from the Friday Institute. There we go, in North Carolina. And what they found out with AI, and I would fathom to say with technology is the same, probably about the same amount, is if someone has a systemic approach to integrating technology or AI with content standards, will you take a look at 73% say no. Right? We're almost at a year with generative AI. 73% say no. The impact of AI on pedagogy and teaching strategies, 65% say no. Potential benefits or concerns, 57. And I would bet the 57%, they're only talking about concerns, not benefits. And the effectiveness of AI integration in teaching and learning, 63% are saying no. And I would imagine you could change that word for technology or AI. It would be the same, because AI and technology are somebody else's job. In my world, it was me. And I would fight and I would scream and say, this is not just me, this is everybody's job, right? Everybody's role to do this. So I clearly am not clicking this right. Am I having trouble, Jonathan? There we go, okay. So how do we find our way? And so what I want to do is just, I have 20 minutes, I'm probably already wasting a bunch of it, but what I would say to you is, this is a conversation that could go hours. I wouldn't bore you for hours, I promise. But I want to start with a framework that you can start to consider, and then we'll go from there. So I'm going to start with, sometimes the government doesn't do great things, but on this case, the Office of Education Technology for the nation, in the Office of Education, has come up with a fantastic guidance around AI. And what they say is basically, regardless, students and teachers are at the center of any work we do around AI. AI doesn't lead the work, students and teachers lead the work. And then we have to do things like whatever we're doing with AI has to align to our vision. It has to be inspectable, explainable, and overridable. So let me tell you a quick story. When I retired, I was working on doing all of my resume and doing all these things so that I could start doing things after retirement. And my second in command, who is a good friend, threw all my stuff in ChatGPT and had them write me, an overview of me. And I got laughing so hard because it told me I did things like, I wrote a book about curriculum, and I did this and I did that. So when we think about these things, anytime we use AI, it has to be inspectable, explainable, and overridable. Me putting a book that I never wrote on a resume probably isn't the best idea I would ever have. We have to talk about minimizing bias and fairness, which we'll talk a little bit about. We have to be contextually aware of what the AI is giving back to us. It needs to be transparent and accountable. We need to say when we're using AI and when we're not. Right? We have to be able to have those conversations. And then because I'm technology and because I've talked about cybersecurity for the last 2 years, I'm going to say data privacy and security is also a big piece. But then I want you to see that blue circle around everything. And the one thing, if you remember nothing else I say about this framework, it is this. Their number one thing is that humans must always be in the loop. Humans must always be in the loop. AI shouldn't be running us. We should be running it. So to do that, I'm going to talk about a couple different areas. The first area I want to talk about is responsible use. And so when we talk about the responsible use of AI, we're starting to talk about AI literacy. Now, I'll go ahead and, again, be a little salty here, and I'll say we've really not done a good job of digital literacy as a whole, but AI literacy is now a thing. And so getting our students to understand what that looks like and our teachers to understand what that looks like. We're going to talk about prompt engineering really quickly. That's a topic and a job now. Did y'all know that there are such things as prompt engineers now? Fascinating. And then we'll talk a little bit about ethical use related to these. So, me and this button, man. There we go. All right. So I'm showing you a quick resource, and this is a resource. And again, you're getting all these slides, so don't freak out if you don't have. We'll make sure you have them all. But this is a great resource, and it's an open learning curriculum. And what they do is they provide curriculum for different grade levels all around AI literacy. And I've put the link down here. It's AI for All is the website. And what I want to show you, and if we had time today, I would have had you do, is they have these great lessons. And that's way too many words on a slide, and I admit that right now, but I had to get it all on the slide. All right, so what they do is they actually give you lesson plans to do with your kids. And I got stuck for an hour doing this lesson plan myself. So they use something called Quick Draw with Google. And can you just, yep. And so what it does is it's going to, and we're not going to do it, but just to show you what it looks like, it's going to ask you to draw. And what you're going to do is with your computer, you're going to start to draw what it tells you. It may tell you to draw a truck. It may tell you to draw a car. It may tell you to draw a person. It may tell you to draw ice cream. And it will let you draw until it figures out what you're drawing. it's fascinating because you get drawing and you get halfway through your drawing and it's like, it's ice cream. And you're like, how'd you know it was ice cream? Right? It's like Pictionary from the days when we all used to play Pictionary and somebody got it within 2 votes. But the neat thing about this is what it can teach students is part of Quick Draw with Google will allow you to go back and see what has everybody else drawn that has been feeding the algorithm. And then you can go back in and say, I don't know why they thought that was an ice cream. And you can make a note to Quick Draw with Google and say, that's not an ice cream. That's not even close. Right? So it teaches kids how the machine learning works through that process. And it's a fascinating process. If you get a chance to do something like this yourself, it really kind of starts to teach you how machine learning works and how it begins to teach itself in that process. All right. Thanks, Jonathan. All right. AI literacy. We're going to talk about prompting. Anybody ever use a literacy strategy called RAFT, R-A-F-T, all right? So our teachers who've taught writing before, or anybody who's done centers or other things, we've used RAFT before in the past. And the idea of that was role, audience, format, and task, or tone. When we do prompt engineering now, first of all, how many of you have tried generative AI? Something like ChatGPT? We're going to celebrate that. That's okay. That was awesome. All right, so
Army with harmony.
Prompt engineering is a little bit like trash in, trash out, right? When you put bad stuff in, it gives you bad stuff out. So you have to learn when you create prompts in Gen AI that you refine your prompt. And the great way about using something like Craft is you give it the context. So I might say, I'm giving a presentation to a bunch of female education leaders. That would be my context. My role is, I need you to create a presentation outline for, right, the audience. Again, the format. You're going to go through each of the process in your prompt. And then you revise the prompt as you go through the process. So if this particular context didn't work for you, if this audience didn't work for you, you refine it based on Craft and how you're going to build that bigger and bigger and bigger and get more information. So when you learn how to prompt engineer, you become better, and it also helps you become a little bit more of a responsible user. And then when we talk about ethical use of AI, this was put out by AI for Education, Amanda Bickerstaff's group. If you're not familiar with them, they're a great group. But they use the anagram EVERY, and that is that you evaluate the initial output, you verify the facts, figures, and quotes, AKA I didn't write a book. You edit your prompt again and again. You revise the results. And then you need to remember that you are responsible for anything that comes out. There is no defense that said, well, AI wrote it for me, it's not mine, right? So when we think about ethical use, we do that. North Carolina came out with its own guidance, which I love, if you need to take a look at a state-level response. But one of the things that we came up with was this idea of, can I use AI on an assignment? Right? And so they've come out with this wonderful chart, and I will tell you, I actually am teaching a graduate level course in a college right now, and this is one of the very first things I shared with them. Here's where my level of AI use is in this course. You can use it. For me, it's full AI use with human oversight, but they have to tell me they've used it, and they have to either give me the chat or the prompts that they've used. Right? So when we think about how do we use this, how do we teach our kids, it's not cheating to use AI, right? We've heard from both Courtney and from Jamie earlier today about how AI can save us time, but it's really important that we use it the right way and we're not copying and pasting everything in there. When we talk about data, we're talking about student data privacy and cybersecurity. So from this perspective, you should know all these laws. None of these laws should be a surprise to you. Some may be a little bit less familiar. HIPAA doesn't apply to K12, but if you are in a higher ed setting, HIPAA does apply. Our medical stuff falls under FERPA, on the medical side of FERPA, but SIPA is the Internet Protection Act. PPRA, if you have ever dealt with families who don't like surveys, that's a big one there. COPPA, HIPAA, FERPA, and any of your state legislation. Whatever AI you're using, you still have to follow all of these uses, right? You still have to save student data. You don't put student data in. You don't say, look at all of these students' data and you come up with something. You don't put any students' data in there with their identifying information, right? There's lots of other ways to do that. So before you use or buy any type of AI, and just to be clear, when we talk about AI, we're not just talking about ChatGPT and others. We're talking about any product. In fact, some of our sponsors here are probably incorporating AI into their products. So you have to be thinking about things like, is it age appropriate? If I'm doing something with kindergartners, it's not as age appropriate as it might be in a high school setting. Does it comply with your regulations? Are there secure access and controls in place? Meaning, not everybody has access to it and is going to create a data breach. Is it encrypted? Is it transmitted securely? Are they regularly undergoing security audits, right? If they say, what security audit or what's a security audit, I'd pass, just saying. Do they meet data usage procedures and policies, and do they meet your own vendor security standards? If you do not have vendor security standards in your district, please come talk to me and I will help you. Because you should already have that in place. The last part I want to talk about is equity, because that is a huge part and a huge question that people have right now about AI. So I think we have time to show it. We were taking a guess on how I did on my time.
I worked as a mathematician and then as a quant in finance. I saw the worst of finance. I went into data science and I was struck by what I thought was essentially a lie, namely that algorithms were being presented and marketed as objective fact. A much more accurate description of an algorithm is that it's an opinion embedded in math. An algorithm is a very general concept. It's something that we do actually in our heads every day. To build an algorithm, we need only two things, essentially: a historical data set and a definition of success. So I build an algorithm to cook dinner for my family. The data that I use on a daily basis is the ingredients in my kitchen, sometimes the time I have, the ambition I have for that dinner. And then I assess the dinner after the fact. Was it a success? I define that because I'm the one who's building the meals. I'm in charge. I have the power, so there's always a power element here. So I get to decide a meal is successful if my kids ate vegetables. My kids, if they were in charge, would have defined it differently. And it matters because as we optimize over time, we optimize to success. The succession of meals that I cook from month to month is a very different path of meals than if my son were in charge. So we do that every time we build algorithms. We curate our data, we define success, we embed our values into algorithms. So when people tell you algorithms make things objective, you say no. Algorithms make things work for the builders of the algorithms. In general, we have a situation where algorithms are extremely powerful in our daily lives, but there's a barrier between us and the people building them. And those people are typically coming from a kind of homogeneous group of people who have their particular incentives. If it's in a corporate setting, usually profit, and not usually a question of fairness for the people who are subject to their algorithms. So we always have to penetrate this fortress. We have to be able to question the algorithms themselves, especially when they're very important to us. We have to inject ethics into the process of building algorithms, and that starts with data scientists agreeing and signing to a Hippocratic oath of modeling. But we have to stop blindly trusting algorithms to be fair. They are not inherently fair, and start looking into what they're actually doing.
I like that one because I understand the meals, right? So just because you use if using vegetables is your thing, I can tell you using vegetables would not be my son's thing, and I would always fail. But when we think about algorithms, it's super important. I didn't put this slide up here, but a friend of mine did a session the other day, and she put up 2 prompts. One was, show me pictures of a nurse, and one was, show me a picture of the doctor. And what do you think happened when it shot out pictures of nurses? Females. What else? White females. And doctors were what? White males. That's an algorithmic issue. That is a bias in the algorithm. Right? So when we think about, as we are going through these processes, it is very, very important that as we're using AI, that we are thinking about what is it spitting out at me and who is it benefiting and who is it not benefiting. Because here's the thing, there are lots of things we do in education where the education is not benefiting all kids. And if we don't start looking at that, and technology can be a big one. How many of you, I'm going to ask a personal question, I promise I won't report this out to anybody. How many of you have blocked AI in your district right now? And I know you're not the one who necessarily blocked it. How many of you have got it blocked? A few? All right. How many of you have it open for teachers? How many of you open for all? All right. So what I want you to think about as we're going through this process is when you block something, who is it benefiting? All right? Because the truth of the matter is, you're not blocking it for everybody. You're blocking it for people at school. But if people at school have their own technology at home or in their pocket, they still have access to that. And so here again, we are creating an opportunity gap for our students of poverty and other areas. So we have to be thinking constantly about access and bias. So when we think about this, and the other piece I want to mention is our population of students who are differently abled. Because when we do things, it's super important to be thinking about how can this tool be used for all students? When we think about our universal design for learning, how can it be used for all? A piece I didn't know, and you may already know about this, but it was something that was new to me. If you have ChatGPT on your phone, you can have a conversation with it. Literally say, hey, I got this kid, and they've got this going on, and I've got this, I wonder what strategies, can you think of some strategies? And you can have a conversation back and forth with ChatGPT, and you can then get that transcript out. Our kids can do that too. Hey, ChatGPT, I've got to work on a college essay. It's asking me this. I know these are the things that are part of my life. How might I organize a paper about this? Right? So we think about the accessibility. So does it ensure accessibility and usability? How can it be used to provide additional support? I have a student in my own home who struggled with writing. It gives a great opportunity for those people who can't get started. How do we teach our kids to do that? And then again, mitigating the bias. What steps are we doing to identify it? We have to teach kids and teachers how to identify bias. That's not something we do in materials, right? How can we report the bias if we see it? If we're using a product, how do we report it? So again, super fast. The last thing I want to mention to you is that there is no expert in AI. I need you to hear that from me because there are lots of people out there right now talking about being experts in AI. There are not experts in AI in education. Be careful who you're listening to. Even me, I am not an expert in AI. It is work I'm doing and work I'm learning right alongside of you. But the key piece here is have a plan. Begin to figure out where that balance is. Have a plan for how you're using the technology, how you're using AI in schools. If you do that, then that balance will help you set our students up for a long time left of their education and be prepared. Because here's the thing, friends. Today it's AI. AI came in like a wrecking ball, literally, to quote Miley Cyrus. But tomorrow, there'll be another technology that is going to come faster. And so if we don't start building that balance, we don't look at how we are building our rocks up and have a strong foundation from the bottom, we will not be prepared for what's coming next. So, have a great time, and I appreciate all of you.
Thank you, Marlo.